Okay, this is a quick stream on Bloomberg, Biden, and politics. We're going to wait for the audio to kick in here. Even though it's showing here, you always got to test it. But we're going to sort of define what politics is with a nice clickbaity title. There's always a tension on the channel between, there's sort of two extremes. There's two poles of how you can do to YouTube, right? You can be completely obscure with no viewers at all. You don't know. I could have dozens of channels on YouTube where I just dump the videos I don't like. I just dump a bunch of videos onto unknown channels. I don't promote them. And that could just be a repository of putting thoughts out there. But one of the nice things about YouTube is you get feedback. In order to get feedback, you need viewers. In order to have viewers, you sort of need to grow the channel, because to be quite honest with you, if you have, let's say you have 700 subscribers, well, if you picked up those subscribers recently, maybe they're all active accounts who are going to be watching you. But if you pick those up over a long period, some of those accounts will be dead, they'll be deleted, they'll be password lost, etc. Thank you for the number 2. Zed Des. I don't know what that means. But essentially, even if your subscriber count remains stagnant, ultimately there's a decay in you could say there's a deflation of the number, or how do I say this? If we think of subscriber count as a currency, then the value of the individual subscriber inflates over time, right? So basically what I'm saying is, if you're not growing your channel's dying. Continually people come in, people go out. That's the way that it happens. If you don't promote the channel, and I've seen this, is that the channel is no longer dynamic. I get the same people coming back saying the same things every single time, and it's not really interesting. I'm not learning anything, and therefore you're not learning as much as you could be, because we don't have that dynamic going on. So Mr. Cool Mug is this exceptional individual because he keeps coming back time and time again, and he keeps it critical, which is difficult to do, by the way. You know, I've noticed there are some yes men who occasionally do their yes men thing, and that's pretty easy. It's easy to be a yes man. It's hard to actually watch and engage with content and criticize it. I know, because if I watch something I don't like it, I just turn it off and I go away. And I think that's what most people do. And if you agree with something, then it's easy to watch it. What's difficult is to watch something you don't like or you disagree with, and to actively criticize that and put your voice out there. That's really what I think strengthens people over time, is this constant criticism. So even though I don't always appreciate it, and I'm sure he doesn't always enjoy doing it, but there's a kind of discipline to Mr. Cool Mug. And, you know, you have to respect that. So he has been making these comments. Let me just search for the Cool Mug here. Mr. Cool Mug. Let me just search for some of his recent comments. Well, it's not popping up when I search Mr. Cool Mug. Did he change his username? Is it like slightly different? Is there like a dot? Oh, there's a space between Mr. Cool and Mug. First name Mr. Cool, last name Mug. Okay. So the most recent question is, if majoritarianism doesn't work, why are you supporting Bloomberg? Why are you not simply indifferent toward elections? So I have made the argument in the past that I don't think people should sacrifice their lives for elections. For example, I think if you have a job and you're going to get fired from your job from supporting Donald Trump, it's not worth, oh, maybe by supporting Trump, I'll convince one person to vote for him. Even if I get fired, it's worth it because it's the Trump movement. I don't think that's a good idea. If I make silly meme videos about Bloomberg and I use Bloomberg as an excuse to talk about deeper issues, etc., what we're talking about here is a risk versus reward calculation. The risk of supporting Bloomberg is very low. The reward is also very low, but then again, this is not a high risk, high reward channel. I'm not taking extreme risks for extreme rewards. You know, a risky video would be something like, I'm going to spend 1,000 hours editing together the perfect video with the music and the transitions and scenes and documentary footage from around the world and spending thousands of dollars. That would be a risk. And the reward would be what? You know, some people like it or something like that. No, that's never been what the channel's been about. And I think when we engage with politics, I've been very critical of engagement with politics. I've said, don't believe that democratic elections are going to change your life. Don't believe that that's a good path to pursue unless you are literally like the Biden, unless you're like the charismatic guy or girl or whoever who's going to get up in front of the public and win the votes and frankly be quite sociopathic about it. Unless you're that person engaging with politics, unless you're directly benefiting from it, like you're a consultant or you're running a campaign. I mean, there are certain people who actually make money in politics. But for me and for most people, it's like sports, right? There are a lot of people who say, sports is a waste of time, football gives you concussions, and you can criticize sports, but there are people who are brought up with it, and therefore they sort of have to pay attention, right? And maybe that's a lack of discipline or whatever, but that's how I view politics. It's a sport, and therefore we shouldn't kill each other over it. I mean, if you disagree with me about supporting Bloomberg, we don't kill each other, we don't fire each other, we don't attack each other. That's the way I view politics as. It's like a sports team. It is one of America's national sports. It's sort of like chess. It's not an athletic sport, but it's sort of a mental sport. And the rules don't entirely make sense, and there's plenty of cheating and steroid use, and you know, it's typical of other American sports. So that's how I view politics. You know, the lowest level of engagement is, this is just fun, this is in the news, I'm reading about it on Twitter, so why not talk about it? Why not make a video on it? Because again, that's part of the YouTube hobby. It's like a bonsai tree. You know, every day you do a little clipping on your bonsai tree. Every so often you make a YouTube video. What are we going to do today? You have no clue how difficult it is until you actually try. What the heck am I going to make a video on today? So we choose someone who's in the news like Bloomberg. On a deeper level, you can look at Bloomberg and say, hey, here's a guy who went from 1% in the polls to almost 50% nationwide in a matter of months by just buying the election. That is proof that the democratic process is not we're all rational decision makers and we're and this is like old talking points, right? This is classic like NRX, like anti-democratic talking points of like, of course, democracy is not what it seems, but it's always good to repeat and reiterate the point because people still don't get it. Like if I talk about politics in order to illustrate a point, that's clearly different from what I've criticized in the past, which is let's sacrifice ourselves for Trump, or even more extreme. I don't even care to mention the people involved, but there have been a number of political campaigns that were more radical than Trump. And those campaigns were around from 2015 to, I guess, 2019 or 2018 or something. There were certain political campaigns where people were saying very extreme things. And there were people who were supporting those campaigns and thinking they were going to succeed. And that's the kind of thing I'm criticizing in politics. I would also criticize people on the left who think that they're going to achieve things purely through the grassroots, purely from the bottom up. Ultimately, you have to have some elite support on your side, whether that's from the military, the media, or the money power. You have to have some kind of minoritarian support. You can't just win the political game with a majority. That's what democracy proposes, or seems to be, or displays itself, or pretends to be. But in all actuality, democracy, like every other system of power, is not reliant upon the majority. It's really reliant upon the minority. So minoritarianism has two aspects to it. There's the objective, analytical, theoretical aspect where we say minorities have power. And then there is the prescriptive aspect of, if you want to survive, if you want to have power, if you want to protect your descendants and promote your descendants. I just said the same word with a different enunciation. I was thinking of in is it the Declaration of, for our not prosperity, for our, I don't know, it's another word for descendants. Who cares? The point is, if you want power, you have to use a minoritarian analysis and apply that prescriptively. So we should act as a minority. We should be, analyze the class structure. What's the breakdown between military, media, and money? Which class is predominant in this superstructure that we live in? And so how are we going to act accordingly? So then you derive prescriptions from the description, from the objective analysis. You actually get to, we should be religious, and we should be disciplined, and we should be, etc., etc. We should have these qualities. We should be rooted in this and that. We should value these things. I'm going to do a video on intelligence because a lot of people will say things like we should be high IQ. I think that's a very bad idea. There are a number of problems with being high IQ. More and more research is coming out on this. Being high IQ is not actually a good thing. In many cases, it's a bad thing. Now, if you have certain fundamentals down first, then you can be high IQ, and then it's not bad if you have your fundamentals down. But we'll talk about that in another video. For this one, just talking about, there's a difference between just talking about politics and then using politics in an effective way to make points or to make funny videos. We are back on the Biden train. So Bloomberg has endorsed Biden, and there's a great dynamic where Biden is a sociopath. He's lied a number of times. He said he had 3 college. This was like 40 years ago when he just started his political career. He said he had 3 degrees. He said he graduated in the top half of his class. All of that was a lie. He graduated in the bottom half. He only had 1 degree. Of course, his son has followed in his footsteps, banging hookers and doing blow and all this stuff. So, I mean, they're an amazing family, the Bidens, but there are these very Chad warrior types. You can see it in the face. You can see it in his strength, his vitality. He's a very old man. His mind is slipping, but he's still there physically. And it's interesting to see the dynamic between the two. What was interesting about Bloomberg is he was a fish out of water, right? He is a money man. He is the one who now in a place like New York City, that's a different situation because of certain factors of New York City. But on a nationwide scale, a man like Bloomberg is not supposed to step out in front of the public and beg them for votes. He's supposed to fund a puppet like Biden to get the votes in order to enact the agenda. And so it's a very odd thing. It was like the Wizard of Oz coming from out behind the curtain and saying, vote for me. And everyone was like, what the heck is going on? It's like the Matrix is breaking. That was what was really interesting about Bloomberg and why I wanted to draw attention to his campaign. Not just in a negative way, but almost in a positive, lighthearted, joyful way. Because, I mean, we can't be sad and mad about politics all the time. There has to be some fun as well. But now Bloomberg has stepped back and Biden has come to the fore. I think it's very interesting how these moderate candidates, very unlike 2016, where it was Hillary versus Sanders pretty much, and the other ones didn't really have a chance. Hillary wanted it that way. She basically structured or rigged it so that there would be very weak candidates, except for Sanders, which is why she hates him so much, because he was a real candidate. The other ones sort of were just there as pawns to be knocked down by Queen Hillary. But then King Bernie came along, and there was a bit of a tussle. Hillary won out in the end because of Donna Brazile and all these interlopers. But that was her strategy. We're going to have a bunch of weak candidates. I'm going to be the one strong candidate, and I'm going to be the presumptive nominee. What happened in 2020 is the Democrat Party learned from their mistakes, and they said Biden is the presumptive nominee, but we don't want him to win without a fight. We actually want to drive up interest in some of these other moderate candidates. And so what they did is they crowded the field with more candidates than ever before. They had a number of competent ones, and step by step, they took them out of the race, in many cases voluntarily. In many cases, they still had money to spend, but they dropped out of the race. And concentrating all that energy and attention on people like Buttigieg and Klobuchar, and then having them drop out at the last minute and fuel all their energy toward Biden, it was a very intelligent strategy, because if from the start it had been Biden versus Sanders, you would have had time for the Biden campaign to focus, the Sanders campaign to focus their attacks on Biden. And there are a lot of weak points of Biden, and so those attacks would have been effective. But by dividing the field into, it could be Kamala Harris, it could be Elizabeth Warren, it could be Buttigieg, it could be anyone, it's anyone's race. By creating that illusion, you divided the progressive camp, you divided Bernie, you divided, and also you created the illusion that, you know, is like a four-man race between Biden, Bloomberg, Warren, and Sanders, when it's really just Sanders versus Biden. So you create all these kinds of weird perceptual illusions, and you divide the progressive, hardcore left Bernie supporters, their attention. They don't know who to attack. They're attacking everybody. They weren't focused on Biden. If it had simply been Bernie versus Biden, we would have seen a very different Super Tuesday. We would have seen Bernie win in Massachusetts. We would have seen Bernie win in Minnesota. We would have seen Bernie win more in states where he still won, but he would have had a bigger margin, right? Because essentially they divided the far left, and they were able to consolidate on the moderate wing, and that was intentional. That was planned from the very beginning. You'll notice, you know, what did Buttigieg say about Biden during the campaign? I'm younger than you, therefore I should be president. What did Klobuchar say? Well, I'm a woman, therefore I should be president. It's like they didn't actually say anything substantive. They didn't have an ideological disagreement. It was simply like, well, I'm a neat, diverse demographic, so I'll pick up more votes, which was just a facile argument. It wasn't actually meant to be effective against Biden. It was meant to be an excuse for, here's why I'm on the stage, campaigning. It was, rather than where it was with Hillary, they put all their eggs in one basket. This time around, they said, let's sort of distribute the eggs. If Biden really does mess up, we have backup plans. But he's not going to mess up. Even when he does, we're just going to pretend he didn't. And meme and just use media. And frankly, we're going to use uneducated voters in the South who don't know their left from their right, and they're just going to vote Biden because it's like, well, I don't really know who the rest of these guys are, but I'm going to vote Biden. Maybe the accent there is a little, maybe that's not quite the Southern accent we're going for when we talk about Biden voters. But anyway, that's kind of what happened. So it is all very interesting to me. I'm taking a look at, is there any more comments from Mr. Cool Mug about politics? I don't see them. So let's take a look. What does the name Chad mean biblically? Variant of Chad, protector, defender, English form of Welsh name meaning battle or warring. Oh, that's very interesting. Famous bear. Century Bishop St. Chad founded the Samaritans charitable organization providing Hebrew stop. I don't know what that means, sir, but yeah, politics is kind of like sports for nerds. It's like chess. It's like chess, but a little more. It's like people who did debate club and Model UN get really into politics. Like that's their thing. In the same way that like you play a football in high school and you love it for the rest of your life. So that's what politics is. I hope I've explained a little bit. I hope Mr. Cool Mug, because I haven't been able to reach him through text comments. I hope maybe he understands, or we can further the criticism, further the conversation. Just a short stream today, man. How that might be a record, but I did want to get something out there. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.